So this whole cycle of having this awareness, losing it, going through the challenges, regaining it, with each cycle of experiencing that, you're getting into a higher level of consciousness, expanded energy, and awareness. Hello my loves, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chelsea, and on this channel we talk about energy, consciousness, vibration, manifestation, and all of those high vibe esoteric topics. If you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you like this video, if it brings you value, make sure to click the like button below. So let's get right into it. Today we're talking about spiritual awakening, the process of spiritual awakening, and the 11 layers of spiritual awakening that I have experienced on my journey. So if you feel like you are in a process of waking up spiritually, whether it's like you're reaching new levels of awareness or consciousness, or you're manifesting larger things, or you're becoming more aware of manifestation in general, it is likely that you're going through the spiritual awakening process. Of course, everyone's journey is a little bit different, so you might not experience all of these same type of layers or all of these same things that I'm going to mention, but I wanted to share with you my experience so that you can use that as a reference point as you move through your own spiritual awakening. I have noticed that the process of spiritual awakening happens in layers. It happens in levels. It seems like we're going through a spiral, and with each level, with each circle in the spiral, we're reaching greater levels of consciousness, greater levels of expansion, and greater levels of awareness and understanding. The first layer in your spiritual awakening journey is going to be understanding the truth of who you are, the ever-present knowing. So this might seem a little bit strange. Why is the first layer already understanding and already knowing who you truly are? So when we are born into Earth, we have all this information of who we truly are encoded within our being already. So we already understand everything in the spiritual journey. We understand who we are truly. We understand our purpose for this lifetime. We understand how the world works, the energy dynamics of the universe, and we understand how to manifest and how to create the life that we want. So we come in already knowing this information, and this is the first step in our spiritual awakening journey. So now as we move into the second step is to lose what we have known. So this step is called losing the truth of who you are. This is the contrast and the challenge. So this is that point where we start getting older and we go into the world and we slowly forget and we lose the things that we know. We kind of forget that ever-present knowing. We forget all the information that we had when we were born and we came into the earth, and it's instead replaced with things that we're supposed to do, expectations from other people. Sometimes we'll have to go to school, we'll have to get a job, we'll have to get money. So there's all of these expectations and this external bombardment of information that's dropped on us, and then that makes us lose the truth of who we are. So we kind of go into the darkness, and then this is when the challenges begin to happen, because as we lose who we truly are, now we have lost our authentic identity and we're growing up with our new earthly egoic identity. And there's nothing wrong with the egoic identity. It's a beautiful thing and it serves us in this lifetime. So I want to make sure that is understood as well. There's nothing wrong with the egoic identity. This is just what happens as we go into life. And this is where we're going to start getting some of our childhood challenges. So everyone has like a different type of challenge, a different contrast in their journey. And in stage 2 is when you start going into these challenges and these contrasts. Now, the next layer, stage 3, I refer to this stage as the party, or fully immersing yourself into the world. So this is kind of when you have fully embodied your earthly identity and you're young, you're probably in your early 20s, and you're out just having a good time. You're exploring the physical reality. You're exploring what your dreams are. You're having great relationships. You're really immersing yourself in the physical world and you're having a great time. So this can go on for several years. This went on for a lot of years in my lifetime. For most of my 20s, I was kind of in this phase of just immersing myself in the party atmosphere of being in my 20s, being young, all that good stuff. So after this stage, you're gonna go into step number 4, which I refer to as the spark. So this is when you're going to have a waking up realization. So this might be where you're just hanging out, you're not trying to look for anything really, and you see something regarding manifestation. In my case, it was the book The Secret. So I remember I was living with some roommates at the time, and they showed me this book, The Secret, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it almost was a spark of remembrance of what I had already known, but what I had lost. So it's essentially going to be when something is presented to you that gives you a spark of awakening. So after I had this spark and I went through this layer, the next layer that came up for me, layer 5, is dark night of the soul. So I had this spark, but I didn't fully go through an awakening experience and become awakened at this time. Instead, I went back into the darkness of forgetting again, and I had a second layer of challenges that came up for me. So in your situation, perhaps you had your first layer of challenges as you were growing up. You kind of overcame those. You went into like the party, hanging out, being in your egoic identity. Then you had that spark of awakening, and then bam, you're cast back into the darkness with another set of challenges. So for me personally, I went through a lot of challenges regarding self-esteem, liking who I was, facing a lot of rejections, things like this. So I had a second layer of challenges, and a lot of my core beliefs were brought to the surface, things that I needed to let go of. And this part is called the dark night of the soul because you're facing a lot of these low vibrational energies that you picked up earlier in your life, and you're working through them. But at this point, your first dark night of the soul here, you're not truly spiritually awakened, so you're not truly understanding what's going on. So it's a little bit more difficult. I know for me, this is kind of the point where I hit my energetic rock bottom, and I was like, I don't think I'm in the right career. I wasn't living in the right town. I just wasn't with people that resonated with me, and I just had kind of like a rock bottom moment where I was like, I really need to make some changes. I really need to create a life that gives me fulfillment, that allows me to follow my passions and step more into my power. So after this dark night of the soul experience, the next experience that I had was the awakening. So this would be the actual spiritual awakening in your life. And for me, this was finding a bunch of spiritual teachers on YouTube. I discovered meditation. I didn't know meditation when I was younger. When I was super young, I used to love meditation. I used to listen to Deepak Chopra, all of this stuff, but then I forgot, right? I went through that forgetting period. But now in this awakening period, I rediscovered those things and I connected with meditation. I found guided meditations and I got obsessed with spirituality, and I was like, wow, this is it. Like all of that information that I had forgotten, I had reawoken to it. It was my awakening. I was coming into my spiritual power. So this for me went on for probably about a year and a half, and I was like, this is great. Like I'm awakened. I've experienced my spiritual awakening. But actually, that was not the case. Next, we went into the 7th layer of spiritual awakening, which was the clearing. Also what I refer to as the second dark night of the soul. This is the dark night of the soul when you're spiritually aware. So you're going to go now into a second layer of facing all those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back, clearing all this negative energy that you've picked up, and diving deep into yourself and healing all of your unresolved traumas and wounds from earlier in your life. So this is when you're going to do a lot of inner work. For me, I was doing tons of inner work, and I was obsessed with inner work. And it seems like when I had my awakening and I discovered that my internal thoughts, my internal reality, my internal vibration was creating my external world, I was super excited. I felt super empowered. And so I went into myself to heal and change my core beliefs and the things that were holding me back. And I noticed that it was like a huge surge of inner work that came up for me. So once I started, it was like all the things in me that I have been ignoring, that were waiting to be healed for so long, they all just came up in like a big wave of inner healing. And I was like, whoa. And so I went into so much inner healing, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get out of this? It just seemed like the more that I healed, the more things there were to heal. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I just kind of surrendered to it, and I was like, okay, well, this is what I need to do if I want to actually make positive changes in my life. So I went inside and did all this inner work, and that's what I refer to as the dark night of the soul, the second one, when you're already spiritually awakened. So after this was done, I went into the next layer, which I refer to as the sage. So this is after I had done a lot of inner work and a lot of inner healing, and I reemerged feeling as if I was a sage, and as if I was at a high vibrational state. I had a lot of spiritual wisdom. I had done a lot of research. I have embodied a lot of the wisdom. I did a lot of inner work. I got a lot of insights by clearing out a lot of my limiting beliefs, and I felt that I was a sage, and I was now ready to teach spirituality. But alas, there was more. So when I hit this spot where I was in the sage mentality, I had a bit of a spiritual ego, and I was like, oh, I'm so enlightened. I know everything. And my spiritual ego actually got me in trouble, and it led me into an ego death because I was so cocky about my spirituality that I essentially was forced to face the fact that that was my spiritual ego by experiencing an ego death. And so this is the next layer, is the ego death. So this is the dying of illusions and identity. And for me, it came up with a lot of health problems and a lot of things that made me let go of so much that I was clinging to. There were so many attachments I had regarding my physical appearance, my job, my career, everything having to be so perfect, right? And showing up, always looking like I had everything together. And when I experienced these health problems, they knocked me down so much that I was unable to show up as that person, even if I had wanted to. And it was so difficult for me to let go of these attachments, to show up not looking 100% how I wanted to look, to switch jobs into another job that did not seem to be as in alignment with who I truly was. It seemed like I had gone way off course. When I was going through this ego death experience, I really thought I had messed up my entire life and that the rest of my life was going to be suffering. That's what I thought in this moment because I lost everything. Everything that was building up my ego, that was giving me confidence, was taken from me. And this was the ego death layer for me. And after this ego death layer, which for me went for about 2-3 years, a very long 2-3 years, and I actually to this day am so surprised that it ended because I thought it was never going to end. So I do want to say a note, if you're going through an ego death type experience like this, it will end. It will end, I promise you. I promise you. I know it sucks when you're going through it. I feel you. I've been there. So after this, you go into the rebirth stage. And so the rebirth stage is when you're holding space for both the physical and the non-physical identities of your being. So you went through the ego death and everything was ripped from you, right? Your identities, your attachments. And that's when you realized you had to let go of your identity, the one that you created when you were younger. You had to let go of it. It was taken from you. And after this happens, you begin to become aware of both aspects of yourself. Your physical self, which is super important and valid, and also your non-physical self, the part that's always there, the part that's always observing. So no matter what your physical self is doing, it's changing. It has a different thought, a different mood. It's like a wave of energy that's always changing. It's like an ocean. And your observer self is like the ground at the bottom of the ocean that's observing the ocean, but it's always staying the same. It's always staying static. So this rebirth experience is when you go through that ego death, and then you're now in a position where you can hold space for your physical self and your non-physical identity as well, your energetic identity. Now, after this, you step into what I'm referring as the expanded guru stage. So this pretty much means that you have went through a cycle of awakening, which means that you started out with the ever-present knowing, you lost the ever-present knowing, you went through the rest of the layers, and now you come back up with the ever-present knowing that you lost in the beginning. So it's a cycle. So this is what I am referring to as the cycle of spiritual awakening. So the expanded guru is kind of when you now have that knowing back and you understand what like the mechanics, the energy mechanics of the world are like, and you understand your power in creating your own reality, and you've done a lot of inner work. So now you have more space to actually create and make things. So now you're kind of in the area where you have a lot of tools that you can use for inner work. So you're using a lot of tools for inner work still. You're still going within. You're still doing the healing, but you're also able to hold space for manifestation, positive thoughts, and you're actually able to embody and see these creations appear in your reality. So that's the final stage, the final layer of this spiritual awakening journey that I have went through. So I don't think I'm done yet. I definitely think more layers are going to continue to come up for me. But from what I gathered and what I wanted to share, it seems like it's a cycle. That spiritual awakening is a cycle that starts you at a level of consciousness that is very high and then puts you through a circle in order to bring you to an even higher level of consciousness. So this whole cycle of having this awareness, losing it, going through the challenges, regaining it, with each cycle of experiencing that, you're getting into a higher level of consciousness, expanded energy, and awareness. So that's my spiritual awakening experience that I went through and the layers that I experienced from the beginning to my current state of my spiritual awakening. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it to the end, I hope that you got some insights about spiritual awakening. I hope that you can relate to this experience and some of these layers. And if you are going through a spiritual awakening, please share your experiences in the comments. I would love to hear what's happening to you. And if you're going through a similar cycle that I'm going through, or if you're experiencing something completely different, I would love to hear it in the comments. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Namaste.